Our VA here in Milwaukee is is the second oldest in the whole United States of America. It was started at the Civil War time, and it was actually started by a group of ladies who were lamenting the fact that the soldiers were coming back from the Civil War and had no place to go. They started raising money by having a bake sale. Eventually were able to raise not only local but state concern, and eventually all the way up to the federal level. That was really the beginning of the Veterans Administration program for our disabled veterans, for the veterans coming home from war. And it provided a place for them to live. Way back then, they bought the property for close to $70,000, which today doesn't sound like a lot. So it started out locally, and it eventually grew into the VA as we know it today. The veterans had petitioned to have a separate building dedicated to worship and faith. They did petition to say, we need a special place where we can go, a place that's dedicated especially to God. And so the original chapel building, which is still here on the grounds, but a little commercial in need of dire repair, was built back in 1879, and it cost about $9,000 when they built it. Finally, the veterans then had a place where they could celebrate their faith, to worship their God, to find strength. Today it is closed because it is in dire disrepair, and there have been various groups stepping forward trying to help us to restore it, and we hope and pray that can happen so it can again be a viable place for the veterans to gather. The VA has always felt that spirituality and faith were an important element. This chapel that we are in right now was actually built in the 60s, so it's almost 50 years old, which is hard to believe. We gather here for worship services, for memorial services, for the civic holidays. It's open for private meditation during the daytime, and our chaplain offices are attached to this chapel so that we are available to family members and to veterans when they may need our time. All of this is funded through a budgetary process because the federal government has decided that because of the sacrifices our veterans have paid, they deserve spiritual support and help and care. The VA has set aside a chaplain service to not only promote spirituality, but also to protect the faith and the practices of the veterans. And so we do have a separate chaplaincy service set aside to lead, to guide, and to protect the veterans. We hold a number of formal services in here, and then there are the informal services. We have services on Memorial Day and on Veterans Day. We have Mass, Catholic Mass, every day of the week in this chapel. We have Protestant services on Sunday morning as well as the Catholic services. We try to embrace all faiths and all ways of life and make the chapel a common ground where people can come and to be themselves and to be very open with each other and with God.
There are many chaplains at the VA Church. Some have been here longer than others, but they all share one thing in common: faith.
I've been in ministry since 1973, and so that puts me around for over 30 years now doing pastoral ministry. I've been at the VA Medical Center now since 1992, so that puts me in at 19 years this coming May. It's been a really rewarding experience and a sanctuary in many respects from things that are just very mundane and colloquial.
I've been at the VA hospital here for about 3 years. I've been in ministry for over 20 years. Some of my duties here, I'm one of the Protestant chaplains. We have 3 full-time and 1 part-time Protestant chaplain here, and I'm on the spinal cord injury floor and also on the 7th floor, which is a medical surgical floor, and sometimes also on the intensive care unit. So those are my clinical assignments.
I've been in ministry for, this spring will be now 11 years. In these 11 years, I have served in parish ministry for 10 of them.
I've been in ministry for 15 years. I'm a Lutheran minister with the Evangelical Lutheran Church, and I serve as a chaplain for the Veterans Administration. I will be here 3 years come this October. I work as a chaplain in the palliative care and hospice department and also in the oncology department. And twice a week I take a tour and minister to the folks down in the intensive care unit.
Okay, I've been here at the VA since July of 1991, so this coming July it's 20 years that I've been here. I started out as an intermittent chaplain, then became full-time, and then in 1994 I became the chief of chaplain service here at this VA.
Not only do the chaplains work in the church, but they also work in the hospital as well. But what makes the VA so special?
I think the VA is a special place because you're serving people who have served their country, often risking their life, paying the ultimate price, and having been a veteran myself, an opportunity to serve veterans.
I also sense a great sense of community here among not only the chaplains, but the entire medical staff that we are part of, and that we really work together as a team in providing the overall care.
The VA is so special because of the patients that we work with, the men and women who have dared to step forward and make a commitment of their lives and put their lives on the line for what they believe in and what we believe in.
The VA is special to me because I spent 20 years in the Navy and I retired back in 1990. There's an old saying, you can take the man out of the Navy, but you can't take the Navy out of the man. And I find it so fulfilling to be able to come back and work with my fellow veterans, people who have gone to war, who have prepared to go to war, who suffered tremendously. And I feel an obligation as their shipmate, fellow veteran, to be there for them in their greatest time of need.
Many people are not aware of the VA chapel, so what makes it so unique?
What makes the VA chapel so special is the people that I see coming are very selfless giving people.
The VA chapel opens up the door for one, diversity, cultural diversity in every sense of the word, in every respect. And it opened up the door for kind of a free spirit, and not an institutionalization of worship and spirituality.
It is an interfaith chapel that we are here to provide the spiritual needs of everyone, irrespective of what their religion is.
If you look around at the walls and the pictures and the flags, you get a sense of a camaraderie. When people come here to worship, it doesn't matter whether they're Christian, whether they're Jewish, whether they're Pentecostal, Catholic, they're all veterans. They all tread the same ground and they all worship God.
VA Chapel has been designated as really kind of the heart and soul of the medical center. Our present medical center director, Mr. Beller, is very concerned that the chapel always have a central place. He said that this is a place where the veterans and their families can come to sort things out, to be in the presence of God, to again be at home with their struggles, to find healing, to find strength. And so when we gather here in the chapel, either as individuals, we again renew that relationship with God, to bring our questions to God. And when we gather as a group, then it's kind of like we gather as a church and we're like Grace on crutches. We're all kind of wounded and we kind of support each other in this journey called life.
I have been involved in ministry and pastoral ministry for over 23 years. I ran into the chief of chaplains here at the VA Medical Center, Chaplain Dick Wheaton, who opened up a door for opportunity to share in ministry here at the VA.
I've been ordained since 1972, so that brings me to 39 years in another month that I've been a priest. I've served in Kenosha at a parish, Milwaukee at a parish, and I've been here at the VA now for going on 20 years.
The reason I became a priest is because I felt called by God to serve in this capacity as an ordained priest. And through the process of answering that call, I think I've found a great sense of joy and fulfillment in my life that I wouldn't have otherwise. And I'm very thankful for that opportunity to serve as a priest and to serve the people of God.
Ever since I was a young boy, I always wanted to serve God. And so going to seminary, being a preacher, visiting people that are ill, it came naturally to me. So it was out of a desire to serve God, but over the years I came to realize that my favorite aspect was visiting my parishioners in the hospital and nursing homes, and said I'd like to do that full time. And there's a passage in the Gospel of Matthew where Jesus says, when you visit the sick, you're doing this unto me. So it's an opportunity to serve the Lord.
You know, that's a frequently asked question. Why did I become a pastor? Pastoral ministry for me is kind of in my family line. My father was a pastor and a minister for over 50 years, and his uncle was a pioneer pastor in our denomination for probably over 40 years. So it's in the genes in many respects. But beyond you know, the spiritual genetic DNA, there's the spiritual calling, where it's not so much an audible voice that you hear, but that inaudible passion that begins to well up in you. And that's what happened to me, which motivated me and pushed me, and really pushed me into going forward and pursuing ministry.
2-3 years before I retired out of the Navy, a tragic event struck my family. My youngest son died. And it was about a year after that, I was sitting in church when I heard a call from God saying, this is what I want you to do. It is unusual, and then I tested that call for 2 years. Then I retired out of the Navy, went to Columbus, Ohio to finish my education, and entered into Trinity Lutheran Seminary.
I think it's because of the example of a parish priest that I knew as I was growing up and was in parochial school at St. Veronica's. There was a priest there by the name of Father Stan Clout. And Father Stan was always full of life and of joy and of hope. And I remember very vividly looking forward to the times he'd come in to teach us in class because of the enthusiasm he had. And that was when really, I think, the seeds of my vocation were planted. And as I moved through the seminary, there were the times of trial and discernment, but I really feel that God has brought me to where I need to be, where God wants me to be, and I have to say I really couldn't be happier doing what I'm doing today.
These chaplains didn't start out at the VA. They've been at many other churches.
I was a minister in many places. I was ordained in 1996, and my first parish was St. Matthew's Lutheran Church in Mount Jewett, Pennsylvania, which is a small 1,000 person town in northwestern Pennsylvania, and it was all Swedish folks. From there, I went to the University of Texas, MD Anderson Cancer Center, to do my internship as a cancer specialist. From there, I went to Houston Northwest Medical Center in Houston, Texas, as a chaplain for 3 years. And from there, I went to Lutheran Social Services of South Central Pennsylvania as chaplain for their nursing and rehab facility and for their adult living facilities.
I started out as a parish pastor in New Jersey, and then I was a Navy chaplain. I did 4 tours on active duty with the U.S. Navy in Texas and California aboard ship with the Marines, and then served another church in New Jersey, and then I did hospital training to be a hospital chaplain in the Twin Cities, and I was there 4 years serving hospitals as a chaplain, and which led me to the VA hospital here.
I have been involved in ministry and pastoral ministry for over 23 years at a Methodist church in the city, and prior to then I pastored in Memphis, Tennessee, Birmingham, Alabama, Sandusky, Ohio, and Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So I've been well traveled. In the Methodist ministry, it's called Itinerant Ministry, so you're moving from one place to the next.
My priesthood has taken me a number of places, not as many as most priests do, because I kind of like to take root where I'm sent. And so my first assignment was at St. Mark's Parish in Kenosha, Wisconsin. And I was there just around 8 years with a marvelous team of priests who taught me what it was to be a priest. My second assignment was at Immaculate Conception Parish in Bayview, Wisconsin. And there I was privileged to work with a marvelous priest by the name of Father Robert Schmidbauer. Bob was one of these who gave his whole heart and soul to the people that he served, and again taught me and mentored me. And The one day I remember he came down to lunch and he said, I'm going to see the Archbishop today and I'm going to ask him to turn the parish over to you. I've taken it as far as I can. And so I was there about 12 years. And then from there, my life brought me here to the VA, which is, like I said a little earlier, I've been here 20 years now. So 39 good years as a priest and looking forward to many more that God gives me.
What made me come to the VA really was, I think really it's the mission of this institution and what it's founded on in serving those who served our country and fought for our freedoms that we enjoy. And so it's a way to give back to my country and to those who have served.
When I had the opportunity to become a chaplain at the VA, I jumped on that opportunity because these are men who have given of themselves, just like I have. And in their greatest time of need, I wanted to be there and help serve them, especially after the 2 wars that we've been in and what's going on today.
The reason why I chose to work at the VA hospital is I was working previously at the University of Minnesota Hospital, but the opportunity to serve veterans, to the patriotic element, the element of serving those who have served their country and many giving the ultimate sacrifice. It was kind of like a logical progression of being a military chaplain for those who are now veterans. So an opportunity to serve in that capacity.
The director of the chaplain services here at the VA is Father Norm Oswald, and he's been here close to 20 years and a well-respected member of this community, and I know that he is relied upon greatly by the veterans who we are here to serve, as well as...
I have very special feelings for Father Norm because in a sense he saved my life. I was in a nowhere place. I had to leave Lutheran Social Services and I was unemployed. And he brought me on here. In the midst of my pain and suffering, he saw that I had value to this organization and he brought me here. So Father Norm, from what I can see, he is a man of great generosity, a man of tremendous love.
If there's one thing that I think that really strikes a strong chord with me, is the Chief of Chaplains here. Father Norm Oswald is just a brilliant man, that's number one. And number two, he has an unending reservoir of compassion and love and care for people. Of all the places that I've had an opportunity to work, of people with whom I've had the opportunity to interact and share, the one thing that is unexplainable is the joy that I have in working for someone who really is passionate about ministry, like Father Norm. He really is the pulse of this entire hospital.
Working with other chaplains brings a richness to the ministry that we all share. We come from a number of different faith traditions, and each of us are kind of like one of those diamonds that reflect the light, which is faith and the presence of God. And all of us together, I think, reflect a more full image of God and God's people.
One of the things I've really enjoyed about working at the VA hospital is the relationships with the other chaplains, with the priests, the rabbi, clergy of all denominations. The fellowship, the community we have as a group of chaplains together is priceless.
Since I've been here, I have worked with literally thousands of veterans. And yet up on the palliative care unit, I have watched the nurses and the doctors and the aides and everyone really work hard at loving the people who are entrusted to their care. They are the most wonderful people I have met. And that goes for all the floors here. These nurses and doctors and everyone really cares for these veterans, and they treat them with great respect.
I was privileged to become a chaplain to the Green Bay Packers while they played their games here at County Stadium. I was called one day and said, "We've heard about you, and we were wondering if you'd be interested in being kind of like the priest chaplain for the team when they come to Milwaukee. And so I would go on that Sunday morning and I'd have Mass for the Catholic players and coaches, and then we would speak at the prayer breakfast, and then I was privileged to go down to the game, and I still am lucky enough that I get up there for a game a year, and I have kept some contact with the team. And in doing so, a number of the Packers anonymously stepped forward and have helped out some of our veteran families who've been in trouble. And they never wanted to take credit for it or anybody to know about it, but I just today would like to thank them for their reaching out and genuine care for the veterans.
Over the years here at the VA, they've had many experiences.
A number of unique experiences here in sharing with patients as well as with staff. Seeing the breakthrough, a particular breakthrough with a patient here who had come through the sobriety program, the drug rehab program here at the VA. And to see a person come through after some lengthy period of counseling and interaction, to see them come through and work their program.
There's one person that really kind of stands out that I ran into very early in my time here in the VA, and he used to come up to the old chapel when we had masses up in the old chapel. His name was Joe, and Joe was a little fella from Chicago who's been here at the VA at that time since World War II. And Joe would come up to read at the Mass and participate at the Mass up at the old chapel. And Joe was a person who didn't have, as he put it, much education, but Joe had a big heart and soul. And Joe was there faithfully, Sunday after Sunday after Sunday. And yes, he wouldn't get always the words in the right place, but the meaning of the scripture always came through. And he talked about how God woke him up, because Joe had been an alcoholic and his life was on a downward turn, and he kept crying out to God for some help. And one day in winter in Chicago, he was running to catch a bus and he blacked out and fell under the bus. And the bus fortunately stopped, and when he came to, the bus tire was like 1 inch from his face. And that's when he decided that maybe God was trying to get his attention and he needed to turn his life around. And as he did so, he reached out to help his fellow veterans. And he wasn't one who just said the words, but he lived the words. And so Joe would probably be one of the most vivid of all the folks that I've run into here at the VA.
This one person came back after 9 years of clean time to hunt me down here at the VA to say, your conference and our counseling time was a pivotal point for me in turning the corner. That's one thing that stood out and has been extremely memorable for me.
I have seen nothing bad about the people who work here. I have seen everything positive, and it has been a blessing for me to be here.
I really invite people to get to know the VA and what it stands for and the work that we do here, and to keep us all in prayer, because there are people who come here who are struggling indeed to put their lives together from the various wars and from the battles that they face in life.